Check out this bullshit. Hey everybody, Alex here, and welcome to another video. 4 quarters, 4 games, 4 years, the finale. And we're trying a little bit something new today. We now have a budget here on the Return to Base program. So I decided let me just test it out with this video since I have to get it out anyway. And I'm recording this a little bit ahead of time. So this is actually the second take because I had some technical difficulties with the autofocus, and at one point it zoomed in on the Yankee hat that's over there, and I didn't realize it too late. So one Diet Coke down, second Diet Coke on deck. So let's kick into it. So the first game I finished from this batch of 4 was Alone in the Dark, the 2024 remake with David Harbour. And I do realize with this challenge, I played a lot of 2024 games. And truthfully, that's really because I was anticipating a lot of 2024 games, this being one of them. And I love David Harbour. I think he's a phenomenal actor, and I think he's perfect for this particular role. I had played the original Alone in the Dark as a kid, never finished it because I was too dumb. But I also didn't realize that eventually, as time went on, when people don't know who to make a villain, they just make a Cthulhu and they call it quits. Didn't realize the memes started all the way back then. Now, this game is kind of a modernization retelling of the original game where David Harbour goes to this asylum down in the South because that's where all spooky shit happens and is given a case to find a missing person. And it's a little bit of his own descent into madness and his own guilt. And you discover all this throughout the game. Now, this is a more modern survival horror game, over the shoulder, third person view, but it's more point and clicky than you might initially think. It's more about the puzzle solving. It's not so much about combat. There is combat. I don't think it's particularly good. But that's not a detriment because the focus is on the puzzles first and the acting. And that's ultimately where this game starts to drop a little bit. The acting from David Harbour, as much as I love him, it seems completely phoned in. He looks completely disinterested in the motion capture as well. He's kind of just looking at the camera like the whole time, like, I can't believe I'm getting paid for this shit. I don't know if that's a direction thing. I don't know if it was a scheduling thing. I have no idea. But what I do know is this studio actually closed down the day this game came out due to cost. And that's really unfortunate because this was supposed to be the first of remaking all of them, from what I understand. Because Alone in the Dark, as much as it's a very famous series, every entry after the first one has met some sort of what can I say? Not critical acclaim, but infamy. Like you didn't understand the assignment. You really didn't understand the assignment. Then you got the one on the 360, and everybody's like, "You really didn't understand the assignment." And I think the one on the Dreamcast is more of like a traditional Resident Evil style game. This again, it's more modern, but it leans into the point and click roots, and that's what I really enjoyed about it, were the puzzles. And you're kind of confined just to, this asylum slash mansiony thing. And you basically go through it, opening doors, uncovering clues and puzzles. And some of the puzzles aren't very obvious. You have to really discover them for yourself. And you have to do so through environmental exploration. All that stuff is so good. But it's really unfortunate because as I was playing this, my wife is watching. She's like, I'm really interested, but the acting is just so bad. Like the voice acting is fine, but everybody seems disinterested, you know? And especially since you get big name actor and actress to come into this, you would expect some effort to go into it. And they were the headline. They were one of the selling points. I played the demo and I was like, this is a day one for me. And this was still a day one. And I played this admittedly some time ago. And finishing it, I thought, yeah, this was fun. This was good. Um, but as I said, it didn't perform well enough. It cost too much money. The studio shut down and it was dropped to like 29, 39.99 maybe a week later, which is when I got it. And there was also some bonkers collector's edition that I don't think anybody bought. Probably the best part about this game is at one point, it really leans into that point and click. The perspective changes, it goes all isometric, breaks a little bit of the fourth wall in there. It's so out of place. And even the characters say this is really out of place. It's kind of like a nod, an acknowledgement of the roots. But it's not tacky and it's not cheesy. It's actually really fun. And honestly, that puzzle, it wasn't the hardest one, but that was the one I was really like, thinking about the most. I was like, it's not as obvious as, oh, there's a door that needs a key, and I saw a key in another room, and I find a gun, and I can shoot the thing to open it up. Not so much of that. This was a lot more. You have to use the environment. You have to click on everything. You have to use every item on everything until ultimately the game logic just allows you to do something. And I think at one point, even David Harbour goes, "This makes no sense." And it's so much fun for that sort of thing. The end of the game, there's several different endings, between the two characters, but it does that survival horror thing where it's like, how do we end this? It's like, let's put up a boss fight, and it's completely out of place. And in a survival horror game where ammo is supposed to be scarce, this game will randomly just start respawning ammo for you because it realizes it takes more bullets than you actually have. Like that's the long and short of it. And I don't know if there's other ways you can work around this boss fight. I didn't bother to look into it, but I can't tell you it just took way too long. I don't really think it helped. I think if it was maybe 3 phases shorter, I'm exaggerating a little bit, it probably would have been a much more effective and long what's the word I want to say, impactful boss fight, as opposed to, oh my god, this is way too long. Kind of like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth was way too long. You do not need to have 3 save points in the middle of your final boss fight, Square. Now the next game I finished was Project Cross Zone on the 3DS, a dream matchup of Bandai, Capcom, Sega, Banpresto, and some other franchises I can't remember. But this has been in my backlog since day one when it came out back on the 3DS back in the day. Originally, it was Namco Cross Capcom back on the PS2. This is the second one, and this did spawn another sequel on 3DS a few years after. And this game originally, I don't think was supposed to come out over here because of licensing and all that sort of thing. But eventually it did, and it has sat in my backlog forever. And with this challenge, I thought now's a good time to get my strategy RPG on, and we're going to do this game. And I will tell you right out of the gate, if you enjoy anything Sega, Namco, or Capcom has ever done, there's something in here for you. You do not need to know the backstory of every single character. The game does just enough of a job so that you get caught up and you know that Squad 7 is a bunch of badasses without ever playing a Valkyria Chronicles game. You know Chris Redfield, which is Chris Redfield from Resident Evil 5, can punch through rocks. And the game is very aware of that, and it kind of makes fun of it about that. The battle system is a kind of I'll say like a Valkyrie profile juggling thing. It's by Monolith, so if you've ever played the Saiyan's Attack game on the DS, or Endless Saga OG, or OG Endless Super Robot Tyson Endless Frontier, whatever the hell it is, you kind of mash buttons and you make combos, and you can do this with all your favorite characters. Now, this is where this game kind of drops the ball a little bit, and I don't know if it's the same thing in the second one. You can't create 100% complete custom teams. To that point, Ryu and Ken will always be on the same team. Your support character can be different, and your support character kind of sort of has to mesh up with the characters that are leading the charge. So, case in point, Ryu and Ken, I'm using them because most people know the Hurricane Kick, the Hadoken, the Shoryuken. Shoryuken obviously knocks somebody into the air. The Hurricane Kick that Ken does, when they come back down, he can keep kicking them. A good combo with them is Hihachi, because Hihachi does kind of like a hammer punch. So that will pull them back down so you can go right into a Shoryu Repot. Now, this is honestly just all one button in a direction. You don't really have to think about much of anything. And then you get another support character, which if you're using like one of the Valkyria Chronicles characters, they shoot a beam or something like that. All this is fun. It's all about the wacky, zany attacks. And then you get super attacks, and they play a theme from the particular game, like Chun-Li's theme or Ken's theme, stuff like that from Street Fighter 4. It's all super fun, high-octane action. And then around the 45-hour mark, you're like, I've seen this 1,000 times. This is not fun or cool anymore. And look, I just got Mega Man X. Now my team is even bigger. Now the fights are going to take even longer. And this game does something that I can't stand in the Super Robot Wars games where you have two guys left, and then all of a sudden somebody goes, "Oh no," and then they say, "What's that?" And then reinforcements show up. And now you have to fight another 15 guys. It is purely there for padding. And I finished this game out of spite because it is long and it does not need to be this long. The fights don't need to be this long. They're not even challenging towards the end. They're just HP sponges. And as much as I loved all these characters, especially when you get the Vesperia characters, they're just OP as all get out. I was kind of just like, I just want to use Yuri the whole time because he could just keep comboing, but you can't team up Yuri with like Ken or anything, and that's ultimately where I was kind of the magic started to disappear a little bit towards the end. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, as much as I love these characters, gameplay in strategy RPG at the end of the day is pretty slow paced. And this game is all about the action within that slow pace. But guess what? If you're throwing in a billion different encounters in one particular map, it's kind of dumb, if you ask me. And ultimately, this is a fan service crossover game. The story ain't gonna grip you. It's just like, hey, what are you doing here? It's like, oh, we were on our way to Metro City. What about you? Oh, I was on my way to fight Sigma. And guess what? I guess our universes got melded together. Everybody's fine with it. I don't think this is a run out and get game. If you have access to it, if it's in your backlog, you want to check it out, you want to see all the wackiness. The usage of 3D is really good. Go for it. I don't know how much this commands, but if it's like $100 game, sorcery. That's all I'm gonna say. Just sorcery. Next up, we finished Link's Awakening. I went for the remake. The original Link's Awakening is in fact a Leap Kid game, and part of the rule for this challenge is I can play remakes as long as the original came out on a Leap Kid year, which this one did. And I went with the remake because I played the Game Boy version as a kid, and I didn't finish it because I was too dumb. I only finished 3 dungeons because Link's Awakening ultimately is a very obtuse game. It doesn't really explain much of anything. Just every so often an owl shows up, which is the harbinger of the fucking apocalypse. And he goes, "Oh, Link, you should probably go over to this dungeon." Woo-hoo-hoo. And then he flies away, and you're like, okay, um, the door is locked. How do I get in? There's side quests. There's other things you have to do. There's items you need to find. The game doesn't point or direct you to any of it. So it's no wonder I couldn't finish this as a kid. This game was very experimental at the time, and it shows because Link is fighting Goombas, and there's side scrolling, and there's fishing, and there's weird mini games in the middle of this thing. From what I understand, this was not really a tech demo, but it was a studio saying, "Hey, listen, we trust you guys to make a Zelda game. You can carte blanche, do whatever you want." And they made this wacky mishmash dream like game that was Link's Awakening. And honestly, as a kid, I looked at it and thought this is the coolest fucking thing in the world. But unlike Link to the Past, I couldn't make heads or tails of it because this is much more about exploration and puzzles than it was exploring, finding a dungeon, and moving on to the next. At least for me. Playing this remake, I'm getting the performance out of the way. Everybody bitched and moaned about it. Calm the fuck down. It's not that bad. Is it annoying at points? Yeah. Is the game unplayable? No. Perfectly fine. If Nintendo trusts these dudes to put out this game and trusted them again to make a new one as of this recording, guess what? I think it ain't that bad. It's going to make them money, so they don't care. Now, the weird blurring effect I'll give you, that was kind of annoying. But I mostly played handheld, so it didn't really bother me at all. I only did the final boss on the TV because my wife wanted to watch it. Now, she had played the original Link's Awakening. She can't remember if she finished it or not, but she did finish the remake. And watching me fight the final boss, she was like, yeah, man. She's like, that blur effect is oof, no good. And even then, she was kind of like, yeah, the frame rate kind of dips on this a little bit. But it's not bad. It's not detrimental. It's not like trying to play Nemesis on the Game Boy when 3 bullets show up and the game just slows to a crawl. It's very serviceable. The characters are very well animated. The music is just as timeless as ever. And I think the whimsicalness of the original Link's Awakening really comes to life in this game. It really embodies it perfectly. And I think this particular remake and style for a Zelda game where everybody looks like, something from a Rankin Bass movie is perfect for the isometric. I'm really happy they made a new one in that style as well. I'm all about it. Now, where I think this game really set itself apart for me doing this challenge was how fast and breezy this is as an adult, where the puzzles are very obvious. And as a kid, they weren't. I feel like I played that game for 5 months. This thing I finished in a week, and it was a fast week. There was no slogging. At one point I stopped to grind rubies a bit just because I wanted to get more stuff, but it was fine. I did one of the new optional dungeons, just as enjoyable. I got a majority of the hearts, which I usually don't do. And I think overall, this was just a really fun palate cleansing adventure. And I think it's a worthy remake of a very classic game that I haven't finished. And I will say one of the things that really did excite me and really did make me happy is that they riffed off of the original intro from Link's Awakening. That, me seeing Link animated by Nintendo, not the cartoon, not in a manual, not some weird interpretation with Captain N, actual anime style Link in a Game Boy game, to me as a kid was mind boggling. And seeing how they took that art style and, they modernized it, they threw a filter on it, threw in some shaders, made it a little bit more like a comic booky sort of thing. Absolutely beautiful. I wish there was more of that. As a matter of fact, if they ever do a cell shaded Zelda game ever again, and they did it like these cutscenes, oh, Maron, I would be all about it. Can't wait to play the next Zelda game. Can't wait to see what they do next within the series as a whole. But, I'm going to stand by it. They should really stick with one isometric game, one 3D game every so often, just so that way it appeases to both fans. I happen to be one of those guys that can go between the two. And then the next game I played, and I have to be a little bit honest here. Uh, Two of the games that I did finish, which I did not, one of them I knew was a Leap Kid game. The other one I did not know. Uh, were actually played for Video Games Gaiden episodes. So I'm going to pick the first one I finished just to keep it a little bit on the regular. And that was Wild Arms on the PS1. Now, Wild Arms, I played as a kid and I never finished it. And as a matter of fact, I am fairly certain I dropped it after maybe 2 or 3 dungeons. What really intrigued me about as a kid was I was like on a RPG freight train. We just came off Final Fantasy VII, and I wanted more of it, and there was nothing. It was this and Shadow Madness, and I was too stupid to know what Suikoden was. So Wild Arms, to me, what was really intriguing, not the whole Wild West thing, it was the fact that 3 characters in separate backgrounds eventually come together to go on a world trotting adventure. Now, I had never heard of such a thing up until that point. Not until years later when I played Dragon Quest IV, which I'll be honest, does it way better. This game, it kind of rushes them together, but really their split up part is really just a tutorial so you understand their unique abilities. Because there's a little bit of that illusion of Gaia thing, or like, your Quintet game where you have dungeon traversing abilities, or like a Zelda, right? Where you get like a grappling hook, you get roller skates at one point, just random bonkers things. And ultimately, that's what I'm trying to say. This game is bonkers. It does a lot of different things. And I'm obviously the video games guide down episode will go more in depth. But I think end result for me was as a kid growing up in the 90s, all this made 150% perfect sense to me. As an adult, I look back and I go, ay, ay, ay. But I'm smiling the whole time because it is so ridiculous. And I'm really happy that this game ultimately got chosen in the random roulette that the guest and I went through to figure out we were playing this game, because I own all the other entries in the series. Because when I got into collecting, I got Wild Arms 1 because I played it as a kid. And then I was like, let me get the rest of them. And I have the whole series. I have 1 through 5. I have 5 brand new. I have XF and I have Alter Code F, which is a remake of this one. And I didn't go through Alter Code F because I was doing this for a Video Games Guide Dan episode, and I thought like it would make much more sense since that's the version they had. But I will say the Wild West thing, I didn't really see it too much in this game other than the music. The intro, what can I not say about the intro? It's amazing. And if you're a fan of anime, you're gonna see a lot of references to a lot of different animes. And ultimately, I am so happy I played through this. It really makes me happy that I invested in the rest of the series so long ago. And I know Sony, it's like they keep hinting that they want to do something with it. And I know there's some weird stuff with the licensing because 1, 2, and 3, and I think 1, 2, and 3 are on PSN at this point. XF, I think, is still on the Vita. Alter Code F is not, 4 is not, and 5 is not. But I think those are technically owned by Xseed at this point and not MediaVision. But oh, I completely forgot to mention MediaVision. They're the Digimon Cyber Sleuth guys. So if you played those games and you liked them, oh, you're in for a treat, man. You're gonna love this one too. Anyway, that's been the 4 quarters, 4 years, 4 games challenge. This was really fun. I think for 2025, I'll figure this out before the end of the year. I'm definitely going to do another challenge similar to this. I do like the idea of doing like 3 to 4 games per video as opposed to a month in review. Because even though these videos don't really go super duper in depth, I'm still, at least me looking at this, I'm at 20 minutes. I only talked about 4 games. Can you imagine if I went through like 8? Anyway, I've been Alex, and I'll see you all in the next video. Take care.